Arrival confirmed. Departure pending.
Episode 100.
Yeah, as Clay said already, everyone called the airline in and out of the island Air Sometimes. And you know what? That was not a joke. It was more like a warning.
Welcome back to Life's Learning Curve. Storytelling. Our own life stories, full of humor, some cringeworthy moments, and at times, a grander purpose. Did you ever wonder just how you became the person you are today? That's us. Storytelling. And now, here's a guy who believes that, in the end, we only regret the chances we didn't take. Here's Paul Hart.
After 8 years and more than 100 episodes, we want to pause the podcast, Life's Learning Curve, this one, and check its heading in this Season 8 opener. I go back to where it all began, Episode 1, a tiny airport in Key West, and a lesson about missed flights that, really, they weren't missed at all. And what started as a story about delay becomes a reminder that growth doesn't always move on schedule. I want to revisit the core idea behind the podcast, and sometimes the pause is the point, and delay is the invitation, and the courage to change shows up only after we stop rushing toward it. If you've ever wondered whether you're still headed where you meant to go, or if you've been circling that runway longer than planned, this episode's for you. There's always one more last flight out.
Life's Learning Curve. Episode 100. The Flight That Never Left.
This podcast has always been a place for stories about the flights we almost took, and the ones we missed, and the ones we finally boarded, only after we were ready, though. And before we go any further, I need to tell you about a small airport in Key West, Florida. Now, Key West sits at the very, very end of the map. Go down south, the southernmost point, you're there. As far south as you can go in the United States without falling into the ocean or the Gulf Stream. So Key West is very small, which is part of its magic. My point is, when space is limited, like in Key West, you stop running. You start looking around and you're noticing where you are and what you're doing. If you are headed there or already there, there's usually a reason, I guess. That's how I've always seen it. See, because back then in the 1970s, Key West, its airport, it wasn't really an airport. Well, it was. It was small, though, is what I'm talking about. There were 2 runways in the terminal. Low ceilings, dim, flickery lights that hummed like they were tired. And most of it was a bar. Not a terminal. It was a bar. Sticky floors and a long counter. Faces you didn't recognize at first, until you recognized them when you looked again. There was no jet bridge headed out to the propeller plane. Just a rickety set of metal stairs bolted to the back of an old pickup truck, idling on the tarmac, roughly, like it wasn't sure this was its job anymore. Above the bar hung a clock that never quite moved. The second hand twitched, occasionally, paused, and then twitched again, like it was thinking about time, not really measuring it. Flights weren't announced on screens, just a single loudspeaker bolted to the wall, crackling in when it felt like it.
Air Sunshine. Departure status unchanged.
And there was always the same man at the end of the bar. There he sat. Boy, it seems like every time I went to the airport, there he was, white shirt, rolled up sleeves, a drink he never finished, and you'd see him when you arrived, and again you'd see him later near the door. No one mentioned it. That was kind of the rule about this guy.
We don't talk about him.
You didn't wait there at that airport bar. You lingered. And somewhere between the second drink and the third announcement, you forgot whether you were arriving or deciding to stay. Now, with that information in mind, here's a clip from the very first episode of this show, Life's Learning Curve, 8 years ago, back when I was still circling the runway, and my guest was author Clay Greager from Key West, and he was explaining something at the time that I didn't fully understand yet, but somehow I needed to hear. Episode 1.
In life, I find a lot of people just stand around doing nothing. Sometimes the flight doesn't leave because you're not finished where you are yet.
Yeah, there's been quite a few times I've been at the airport in Key West and I've wondered, should I be leaving? Is this my chance?
Take it or wait and watch. Neither one is right. Neither is wrong. The point is, take that opportunity. Stay or go.
So don't tread water, do something.
Exactly. Well, if that's your mission statement, anybody listening to this new podcast you guys are making is in the right place. Life's Learning Curve. Paul, it's going to be as good as a breakfast burrito.
Have you ever been to Key West? Well, for me, I was in my 40s somewhere, around 2001 in the tropical U.S. town. When I arrived there with my family, it caught me off guard. Oh, I loved it. It was one of those places you drive into and you're like, oh, look at that.
So
look
warm.
at that. There's chickens everywhere. There's palm trees.
I like all the colors.
Feels like the
all
tropics.
the colors.
The comfort was unfamiliar. The happiness felt suspicious. And paradise could be quietly unsettling when you're not used to peace. It's just a huge, terrible shame. You walk into a nice place like this and it's a shame that you're suspicious of it. So I had to learn how to let go, and I had to learn how to relax. It just doesn't happen. A lot of people can't relax. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been walking the streets in Key West, just looking around, seeing the environment, the birds, the ocean, and just seeing people flip out because they can't turn it off from their work week. During the middle to the late 70s, there were only two real ways to arrive or depart Key West. One was by car, wandering down that thin black ribbon of road called A1A. 40-some bridges long, and each one quietly daring you to keep on going. And the other way to get to Key West? Well, the other way was by air, a propeller plane shuttle service from Miami called Air Sunshine.
Which everybody lovingly called air sometimes.
Welcome to Key West. Flight schedules that were then tentative.
Now, as I said before, the first flight arrived around 9 o'clock in the morning, and the last flight out off the island was scheduled for 11 p.m. That's what everyone said, at least. Scheduled.
Arrival confirmed. Departure pending.
Yeah, as Clay said already, everyone called the airline in and out of the island Air Sometimes. And you know what? That was not a joke. It was more like a warning. Back then, Key West wasn't crowded. It wasn't loud. It didn't rush you. And that was the strange part.
Paul, you ever notice how silence can make people nervous?
Clay said things like that without looking at you, as if he wasn't talking to you. He was talking to you, but also to people around you for the benefit of anyone within earshot. So Key West was one of America's and the world's best kept secrets back in the 1970s, not because it hid itself, but because it didn't ask anything from you. No pressure, no ambition, no urgency. And for most of us in the high-speed, uber-pressured world, that was terrifying.
That clock ain't right. You ain't right. Stupid. Know-it-all clock.
People would arrive at Key West and feel something unfamiliar. Contentment. Belonging. A strange lightness. And instead of relaxing into it, they became uneasy.
Paul, most folks don't trust happiness. Feels like a setup.
So back then in Key West, the bars closed early, but there was a reason for that. And here it is. The bartenders wouldn't yell, "Last call," last call to last drink. They'd announce,
"Okay, everybody, last flight out. Last flight out at the airport. Everybody out."
Let's get out of here. Go to the
There was no
airport.
last call for alcohol. And many dared to drive back to Miami on that black death trap ribbon of a highway. Route A1A, it weaved back up the Keys at night. In the pitch blackness, these overserved patrons were taking their alcohol binged lives onto that highway. Too many terrible accidents, so what was left? That left Air Sunshine.
Hey, hi, welcome to the Key West Airport Bar.
Thanks.
The one bar in town never closes. Come on in, grab yourself a lobster trap, sit down and make yourself home.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen. Air Sunshine is at full plane tonight. Service to Miami. Or, I don't know. Maybe we're not flying tonight at all. I don't know. Pilot to the bar.
what no one realized yet was that the discomfort wasn't the place. This unsettling feeling was inside them. Inside me when I first got there too. Act 2. Delayed. So if you were booked on that 11 o'clock flight out of Key West on Air Sunshine, and you're sitting at that bar waiting for it, you learned fast that scheduled, that word, meant hopeful. Because a lot of the time the pilot of that plane and co-pilot were sitting right next to you at that bar. So the airport bar stayed open all night and all day. At least it was rumored that it did. And when the Old Town bars in Key West closed, that's when the real party began. Out at the airport, everyone went out there, even locals. The only open bar in town.
Funny thing, Paul. Nobody panics when the plane doesn't leave.
They just stay.
Yeah. Exactly. They didn't call it failure. They called it another day in paradise. Truth is, there are probably 8 or 9 people still out there from the 70s sitting at that bar deciding whether they're staying or finally leaving.
I started to see it then, what he was talking about. This wasn't about Key West. It wasn't even about flying or the airport.
We all carry a last flight out, an idea, a perception, a very specific version of ourselves waiting at the departure gate.
Thinking about that job you didn't take, or the offer that was made to you, or the move that you could have taken or that you postponed. The phone call you never made. The person you never said goodbye to. The job offer you were given. Opportunities left, opportunities to the right.
Yeah.
Clay, I'm kind of that way. To be honest, I have trouble taking that step forward. The what if things.
What if you take a chance? You may benefit from it or take a hard loss, but at least you made an effort. You climbed up that 10-meter diving board and saw that there was water in the pool. And you went for it. You know that quiet thought you get right before sleep? If I could only be more happy, if only I'd taken that job in Savannah, if only, look at, because I'm talking directly to you, Paul, you're dead in the water these days. You got to stop climbing back down the ladder of that 10-meter diving board. The water's there. Take the chance.
Departure.
Beautiful day.
Good morning.
Hey.
Clay, how you doing? I was just thinking about what we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, okay.
So, well, what you're saying, I'm going to say it back to you. Tell me if I'm right. What you're saying is that you think there's still some people from the 70s. They're still in Key West. They're still waiting for their last flight out of here. They never launched.
Yeah. Or maybe they realized something. Maybe the point was never leaving. You got to figure out what's best for you.
Now, I got to tell you, Clay was a guy who never told me, or as far as I ever heard, anyone else what to do. He wanted you to think about it. He wanted you to consider it. He wanted you to take action when you thought it was right for you. He often reminded me of who I was at that time.
See the sun? Every day I wake up and I thank God that I woke up. I was given one more day. I say to myself, there's the sun. I'm going to make believe that that sun, that very sun rose today only for me. That's my sun, my day, and I'm going to make the best out of it.
Back in 2001, and I have to admit, even today, it's 2026. That line stuck, and it followed me home to the Midwest. It followed me into doubt. It followed me into delay and my missteps. Why was I doubting? Why was I delaying? I used to regret those things, and I turned around, and now I felt myself looking forward, looking in a different direction. Life began to look like an adventure to me. Oh, that's exciting. I couldn't wait to try this. It wasn't an excitement like God's love is for us. It was a direction forward. It was good. It was positive and full of hope.
Today, the sun rose only for me. Arrivals. Departures. That's living.
This podcast, Life's Learning Curve, started out as my own missed flight. It was a delay I didn't understand yet. Do I understand it now? A little bit better. But when I slowed down and looked around and listened, really listened, I realized that I was being mentored. I found teachers. I found the Holy Spirit. I found stories. Wonderful stories. They were there. They were in my life already. I'd been blessed, and I found myself standing at the edge of that 10-meter diving board, finally leaning forward and trusting that in the pool there was water. And when I looked, full of water. Time to take a change.
There's always going to be one more last flight out. You just have to trust that it's going to be there when you're ready.
I still go to Key West often because, for me, every time I step onto that island, something in me wakes up.
So we just stopped at this quaint, cute little Cuban coffee shop. We got what was recommended by one of the locals, I think, I don't know, but it's iced coffee, caramel latte. That's mine.
And I got vanilla caramel latte.
So cheers.
And tell about the ice cubes.
Oh, the ice cubes are awesome because the ice cubes are made of coffee, so that when they start to melt, it's not watered down. It gets stronger.
Cheers.
Cheers. From Key West to you. That's what I'm talking about.
Key West has a way of rejuvenating me. I don't know if it does this for anyone else, but when I get there, I think differently. I relax differently. I get things done. It's a mind game. I realize that. My mind seems to fill with ideas that are so coming in from different directions. My mind fills with ideas I don't normally reach, and I have these connections I didn't know were waiting. It's like all this stuff is on pause, and I pull into town, sit down, relax. My mind starts to go in this other direction. And for me, I didn't know these new ideas were sitting there waiting on pause, like and just about ready to be downloaded into your computer. You just have to hit that key. And for me, over the past 25 years, that evolved into 3 documentaries and a themed media business, selling a screenplay, 8 podcast episodes, and a self-help series called The Best You Can Be. And at the same time, when I am in Key West, everything slows down. It's partially that the pacing of things is more relaxed, more laid back. The noise fades, and my thoughts settle enough to let the creativity, if you can call it that, let it come through. Clay once told me that
Taking a chance in life isn't optional. It's necessary.
And since I've listened to that advice 25 years back, I found my state of mind thriving. That's the strange beauty of this place. It looks perfect, it feels inviting, and it quietly dares you to become more than you were. And each time I leave, I see him. I see him in the airport each time. It's that man, the man from the airport. He's at the bar, he's in the same shirt, same calm, same unfinished drink. And the last time I was there, he looked right at me.
You know you don't miss the flight. You just decide when to take it.
That was it. No explanation, no follow-up, and somehow that was enough like a Twilight Zone episode that with wide eyes I paid attention. And you know what? Maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the delay is the invitation. And all you have to do is make a choice and step through the door. So what did I learn today? Well, there's a monster learning curve here for me. You know, there's some shows that we do, and there's things learned, and there's things that we acquire, and we learn what not to do, and what to do, and what to stay away from, and who to stay away from, and who to run towards, what things. So if you're listening to this right now, there's a good chance you're standing at a gate of your own. Maybe not in an airport. Maybe not even somewhere you can point to on a map. But you know the feeling. You know that tug. Many years later, long after I stopped worrying about schedules, I realized something. That clock back at the Key West airport, the one that just twitched sometimes like it was thinking about time rather than telling time, it wasn't broken. It just, it wasn't in a hurry. Sometimes time doesn't move forward until you do. Let's leave things right there. For Life's Learning Curve, I'm Paul Hart. Subscribe to Life's Learning Curve at lifeslearningcurve.org and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Podchaser.
This Season 8 episode of Life's Learning Curve was produced by Sebastian T. Dog and Paul Hart. Find us just about everywhere podcasts are heard. Visit our website, lifeslearningcurve.org. While you're there, subscribe. We'd love to have you aboard. This episode has imaginative voice creations. To protect the privacy of others, some names have been changed and characters conflated. Episode 100, The Flight That Never Left. For more true stories from our life's archives, you'll find us again right here on Life's Learning Curve.